Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Audio.
Welcome to the Clark County Fire District 6 workshop. We're going to be discussing our volunteer program tonight before we go to our regular meeting. You'll be able to ask questions on the live chat if you'd like. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Maurer to go through the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Lusbeck. Before we get started, I just want to point out everyone under the chat bar, there's a yellow highlighted part that says Clark County Fire District 6. If you click on that Dropbox link, that will open up the PowerPoint as we go through this presentation. Also, if you'd like to comment or ask questions through the presentation, you can also do that in the chat box. At the end of the presentation, Board Secretary Dave Taylor will read those comments and allow the board to answer. If you don't have an opportunity to type those in as we go through the workshop, you can also contact me anytime at Kristen, Kristan, .Maurer, MAURER, at ccfd6.org, or you could contact anyone in the fire district and they can point you in the right direction. So it looks like we have quite the audience tonight, and we'll go ahead and get started through this volunteer program board workshop presentation. I just would like to say, first of all, over the past 4 years, the board has continually asked staff to come up with a volunteer program review of the past years. And every year, staff comes back with information, and the board says, let's keep it going one more year and come back again. So this is where we are. Some of this stuff that you'll see in this presentation is very similar. And I have to say that when we measure the volunteer program, it is just as difficult for staff as it is for the board, as I'm sure it is for the current volunteers. We are taking people and emotions and measuring them against business standards, and that's difficult for anyone to do. So what we're going to try to do in this presentation is remove the emotion and just matter of fact say where the program has been, where the program's heading, and where we'd like to see it go to carry District 6 into the future. We know that the current cadre of 19 volunteers that we have are dedicated individuals that want to see this program move forward, and we couldn't ask for better people than we have now that are helping carry this along. So District 6, since the time of its inception and even before, had a volunteer program, but we're going to outline in the following report Station 151 response data, program cost, staffing and volunteerism overview, and we'll also make recommendations for future volunteer programs at Clark County Fire District 6. So again, if you want to follow along with the PowerPoint, it's on that right-hand side, and you can click that open and follow along. The main core of our volunteer program at this time is to staff Station 151. The board gave us the directive that they wanted Station 151 staffed 40% of the time. So Station 151 sits on the border of 2 fire districts. It serves the north end of Clark County Fire District 6 and the south end of Clark County Fire and Rescue. Call volumes in both these districts is increasing. So, like I said, the goal is 40% of responses to be covered at Station 151. We see a steady decline throughout the years at Station 151, and we're not able to cover those calls the way we want to. So the board set the goal of 40%. In 2017, we were unsuccessful in that goal and only responded 26.2% from that station. In 2018, we only responded 18.6%, and we've cut that almost in half in 2019 to 9.5%, meaning that we only covered 48 of 507 calls in the Station 151 area. Of those 48 calls, any that are in the District 6 area, are mirrored by our career engine. So it's a dual response for those calls. We have an increased need for district coverage. Station 151 crews covered other stations over 90%, but that means that, or Station 151 responses were covered by other stations over 90%. That's either Career Engine 6.3, Career Engine 6.2, or Career Engines from Clark Fur. So when we have to cover those with career engines, it increases our travel times, response times, and it creates a coverage gap. It's not that the volunteers are not giving the time to the station. It's not uncommon today for a family to have two personnel or two people work to make an income and to make ends meet. And so the limit of time that they can give as volunteers is limited. We're seeing the call volume in the Station 151 area being mostly in the daytime and weekends. Unfortunately, the times that the volunteers currently have to give are those weeknights where, yes, the station may be staffed, but it's not staffed when we need it staffed to respond to calls. So we're not meeting the requirements that the board set up for the volunteer program at 151. Not even close. We're about a quarter of what we would anticipate. One of the things we need to talk about when we talk about the volunteer program are the cost. So there's lots of costs that are associated with the volunteer program. Last year, when we did the same volunteer program report, we requested that we do one more academy and no more in the future. The reason for that being is the cost of the academies, and we weren't seeing the cost benefit. At that time, the board didn't give us direct direction that we wouldn't have to hold another academy, but I want to break down the academy costs so we can see what we're spending the money on. So academy costs include everything from background checks, medical exams, driver abstracts, immunizations, any subscriptions to programs that we have, and equipment. The total per candidate is $6,000 to $9,000 per candidate. We try to hold an academy of no less than 10 volunteers. That's our good point where we can say that we'll train enough because we anticipate that we'll lose some and that will carry us forward. So 10 times $6,000 to $9,000 a candidate is anywhere from $60,000 to $9,000 per candidate. And if you equate that into only covering 9.5% of calls, we have to ask ourselves, is that what's best for the 75,000 people that we serve? So the annual cost can vary of the volunteer program. It depends on staffing, the equipment we have on hand in regards to the equipment that we have to buy, and maintenance. The 2019 costs of the academy are broken down in your Appendix 2 of the report presented to you in your board packet. So those costs, the main cost of that is the academy. That, like I said, is anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000. There's insurance costs, and then stipends is our other big cost, averaging about $23,000. SCBA is about $20,000, and then you have to include apparatus and stations and station maintenance and facilities in there. So you can see that's how we came up with that $235,099. If you take what we spent in 2019 on the volunteer program, which is $235,099, you take the amount of calls that volunteers responded back to, which was 48, that means that we're spending $4,898 per call for volunteer response. When I say that, we also need to be clear that that $4,898 is mirrored by career engines. So that $4,898 is just the cost to have that volunteer apparatus respond, not to have the call covered by career staff as well. So what we see with the volunteer academies and why we want to discontinue that is we put a significant amount of money forward, so that's $60,000 to $90,000. We add new members, and within a year, we usually drop those memberships by half. So academies are held in 2018 and 2019. We added 17 new members to our volunteer cadre. Numbers lost in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, we lost 12 firefighters and 11 EMS. And in 2019, we lost 4 firefighters and 2 EMS. One of those firefighters left almost the day after they got pinned from the academy. So you can see we invest, we pay forward, and the return on investment's not coming back to the district. Current volunteer staffing that we have right now, if we compare from June 2019 to today of February 2020, we had 3 captains, we've dropped to 2. We continued with 1 lieutenant. We had 18 firefighters, we dropped to 16. We had 2 EMS only, we dropped to 0, for a total of 24 volunteers in June of 2019 and 19 volunteers in 2020. I know that when we look at the whole cadre of the fire service across the nation, a big portion of that is made up of volunteers. But those big portions of volunteer departments aren't combination departments. As a matter of fact, if we're not the only one, we're just maybe one other department that's still carrying suppression volunteers at our department. That's the reason why we get volunteer applicants from all over the Portland metropolitan area. So volunteerism is down across the country, and in 2019, NFPA reported volunteerism is at the lowest national level since 1983. We have a very high turnover rate, with most of our volunteers just staying under a year. That's because they go off to get other jobs or work for different companies, and we see the process where we need volunteers need affiliation, so they get that through District 6 and then move on. It's not really a District 6 problem, it's a state certification problem, and that's probably the level where we should address that issue. So, as we've reported the last 4 years to the board, staff continually faces an uphill battle to maintain the volunteer program. We continually get increased training requirements, which you all saw through the WSRB rating, where we had to get them all Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 and hazmat certified. We have increased liability and regulations, not just on volunteer firefighters, but on career firefighters as well. There's increased costs to the program that we just can't maintain at the rate that we lose them. There's a general decline in volunteerism and a rapid turnover rate, and we lose trained volunteers to full-time positions. Staff is at the point where we need a revision of this program. We have identified 3 ways that we can revise the volunteer program. Option number 1 is to replace all of our combat firefighters with Fire Corps. So you would take people off the line of being suppression volunteers, you would move them into a Fire Corps program, and we could either marry that up with Vancouver or not, and they would be essentially support volunteers. And again, Fire Corps is that program that falls under the same umbrella as CERT. Option number 2 is to maintain our remaining cadre of volunteers, pull them out of Station 151, put them on engines with 6.3 and 6.1, and have no new academies or programs. If we were to go with option 2, we would attrition out this program, and the recommended date for that attrition would be December 31st, 2020. Meaning, at that point, December 31st, 2020, we would either transition those volunteers to Fire Corps or support services if they chose to, or if they chose not to, at that point, they would know there would be no more volunteer opportunities for them at the district. We're hoping with the cadre of people that we currently have that they would want to transition into those other areas. That being said, if we got to the point where we had only a minimal amount of volunteers where we couldn't support training, we would have to attrition that out sooner. Option number 3 is transition to service volunteer program for district support, public assistance, and information. For option 1 and option 3, we would do those and start them effectively the day that COVID-19 is under control and we could bring volunteers back. For option number 2, we would have a drop dead date and then transition after that. Volunteers currently at District 6, in addition to doing fire suppression, provide so many services for our department. Staff doesn't see how those services would be sacrificed or any different by moving to a support service volunteer program. So support service volunteers could still assist with the open house, fishing derby, idea fair, healthy kids fair, Santa's posse, parade of bands, Read Across America, the fair, smoke detectors, and any other public education event. We could actually grow our community risk reduction programs with support volunteers more than we can with combat volunteers. There's also chances for new opportunities that would include safety seat inspection for kids, bike helmets, elderly safety fall prevention, bringing back our smoke detector program, and bringing back our hand-on CPR. I know one of the main components of the volunteer program is Station 151. The district is not looking to shut down Station 151, but we don't see how we're doing an effective response from there at this time with what we're doing. So currently the public safety complex houses the volunteers, the sheriffs, and the fire marshals. I have met on numerous times with Chief Knorr, and we are both committed to developing an operational plan that would better suit both of our districts. We know that this facility is an important location to both of our districts, and we're committed to making that plan to make it better. The goal is to provide a greater community safety out of 151. So again, I don't want to diminish our history or the commitment that so many people have put into this program. It has been an amazing program and one of the highlights of our department. However, times are changing and staff is struggling to keep it going. And I really would like the board to consider options 1, 2, or 3 to move this program forward so we can continue to grow and change our department as our community and the world continues to grow and change. And that concludes the presentation.
I don't see any questions yet, so let's let the other board members voice their opinions or concerns.
Casey Collins here. Thank you, Chief Maurer, for putting this presentation together. I know it's been painstakingly obvious over the last few years, and may not be the news that we want to hear, but it's the facts that we have to face. And so I'm not going to recommend anything until we go to our regular meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins.
Commissioner Pfeiffer, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for the presentation. I recognize that it's been an agonizing decision. The volunteer program has 4 years worth of information and data has been put together to develop this PowerPoint. So it is a very difficult decision, but as the chief said, we need to make decisions based upon business sense, and that's what we're going to have to do here as we move forward.
We can go ahead, Chris and Casey, we can go ahead and talk about our preferences back and forth without making a decision. We'd have to make a decision in the regular board meeting under new business, but we can certainly talk about our opinions. And I'd be glad to go first because you know that I talk a lot. But I would like to see a combination of options 2 and 3. Option 3, I know that there's folks in our community that would like to volunteer to help the fire district that aren't physically capable of being combat volunteers. I think we would pick some people up from our CERT program. I think some of our current volunteers would be glad to stick around as support people. And I think that program, we could grow that program, and it could be a Fire District 6 program. I'd be more interested in a Fire District 6 volunteer support program than being part of Fire Corps at this point. Option number 2, we've got 19 combat volunteers. I know a lot of them are very dedicated. We did hire another training captain to deal with our volunteers. Instead of putting a drop dead date of the end of this year, I'd like to talk about some sort of formula. At the end of the year, if we have less than 10 volunteers, then we eliminate the program. If we have 10 volunteers or more that are active, take a look at maybe going another year. and give them some opportunities. Now, I would assume under option 2, Chief, that they could ride out with the D crews. If there's a fire and they come back to the stations, they could respond on additional engines. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, Commissioner, that is true. However, if we don't do the drop dead date, then we bump into problems with training and requirements and that kind of stuff. So as long as we kept a date that it would end, then we can keep their training and requirements up to go indefinitely. I don't know that I could say that they could always come back and respond to engine, because I don't know that we could keep their requirements up.
And I understand the drop dead date. I'm just wondering if we should give the current combat volunteers, more than 7 or 8 months to see if they'll actually come back or not, I guess would be my issue. They're already firefighter 1, 2, and hazmat, so it's the continuing training if they don't keep up. I think we've been a little lax on training anyway. They're supposed to make a certain percentage of training. I'm not sure if everybody is. I don't want to speak out of turn. But at the end of the year, we would be able to see how many folks are active and how many folks are current on their training, and see if we want to go another year or not. And we do have a training captain that could kind of oversee it and report back to us with numbers. That's just my feeling. I don't know how the other board members feel, but I think we're done with volunteer academies. I don't see any reason spending that much money on. Ultimately, after a year, getting 4 or 5 people, I don't have a problem with that at all. I love option 3. I just want to maybe tweak option 2 a little bit. I see how the other board members feel.
Chief, what would you say is this Chris Pfeiffer here. Chief, what would you say is the average tenure of the 19 volunteers that you do have? In the PowerPoint, it indicated that folks turn over at a rapid rate. I'm just curious what the 19 current members, what their tenure looks like.
The 19 current members, I would say 50% of them are 5 years, probably.
Okay.
They're the dedicated volunteers. It's that rapid turnover that we continually get. However, a hybrid of keeping them still working and being on the engines, it doesn't alleviate the training costs and the training time and that kind of stuff. So a hybrid more than the December 31st date, it still takes, we're still maintaining a volunteer program. We're not essentially making any changes other than pulling them out of 151, if that makes sense. Which is what we're trying to redirect to help us more with support services.
Right. I see definite advantages to the support services role with the sort of continuation of the community risk reduction projects that you've spoken of, the citizen CPR and things of that nature. They add a lot of value to the fire district and to the communities that we serve.
I would completely agree.
Casey.
Yeah, Commissioner Collins here. I'd be totally willing to look at that combination between 2 and 3, keeping in mind what Chief Maurer and Chief Knorr have in mind or could come up with for what the future of 151 looks like. Sounds like, option 2 and 3 would be some type of abandonment of 151. And I'm concerned about, both issues, our internal volunteer program and what the future of the department has, but we need to suit our own needs and address that first. But keeping in mind that we have, a facility up there and an opportunity and a partnership. And so, as I said before, it's been a long journey to get to this point. It's kind of disheartening about the numbers that we have. And as Chief Maurer said, that this might not be the place to address the problem with accreditation for the volunteers. It's more of at a state level. So it's multifaceted is the way I'm seeing it. And I don't know if they have an opportunity for us as far as some kind of an incentive or something like that for these people who are being trained at our cost, just long enough to get their accreditation, then they move on and hire on elsewhere. It seems like we're doing a regional service and paying for it with our local resources. Any thoughts about that?
Chief Bauer, what are the plans ultimately at Station 151? Are we going to keep some apparatus there of some sort? I guess that's question number two. Question number two would be support volunteers. Could they respond to rehab type vehicle? Could they respond an air rig type vehicle? Could they keep their EMT certs?
So, first question, Station 151. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but Chief Knorr and I both agree that with the board's direction of not looking on the east side of I-5, that 151 is a station that is affordable, and we should look at how to staff it. So whether that's staff it or place different apparatus there, such as apparatus that may be more appropriate, like a water tender and a brush rig, or a rehab rig and an air rig, I can say that Chief Knorr and I are committed to figuring out how to have a fire department presence at that station. And we just need to know the answer to the volunteer program before we can move forward with that. So you do have that commitment from both departments. As far as support services volunteers maintaining their EMT, we specifically got rid of the EMS only volunteer program because it was hard to maintain their EMT. The support services that we're looking at doing don't necessarily need an EMT certification. We have just always been the gold star. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be the gold star, but we also have to look at, are our 75,000 citizens paying for EMT affiliation in the whole Portland metropolitan area, and is that a good use of our business dollars?
Oh, I'm not talking about taking any new people on at all. I'm talking about, I don't know how many of the existing 19 combat people we have are EMTs. If they switch to support services and they wanted to keep their EMT as long as they were affiliated with us, is that a possibility, or is that very costly?
It's very costly because there's requirements that they have to keep up with that EMT certification, and essentially that gives Captain Simica 19 more people to manage than he already has. It's not just as simple as paying your $40 every year and getting an EMT certification. You have to have the classes and requirements to maintain that. So it would be staff's recommendation that they were strictly support services volunteers and not EMTs. We have the career staff to respond to calls as needed.
Well, I'm not questioning that. I was just wondering for things like the fishing derby and the idea fair and some of those things. Roller derby, a lot of times they call and want to know if somebody would come stand by at those events. Mm-hmm. I don't know if support people could have first aid certs and do that. I don't know. Would we send paid folks? I'm not sure how that would work, because that's one of the things we do provide. So what's your feeling on that?
Well, I think we need to ask, do we provide what they're asking for, or do we provide more than they're asking for? I'm not so sure that roller derby requires an EMT to be on scene. And sometimes we may need to say no to those events, but find other events that we can do, like smoke detector installation or hands-only CPR. You know, we may not be doing the right events all the time.
Yeah.
I think Casey Collins here. I don't know if such thing AMR would be willing to participate in some of those things on standby situations, like Columbia River High School football games and those types of things. And we used to do a lot of things, and we have to evolve. And if we're not going to have the EMT volunteers, then we may need to reach out to somebody else who could be on standby, to be dispatched, at those events, maybe AMR, I don't know.
Yeah, Chief, those events are, it's Chris Pfeiffer here. Those events, we do those for free, those standbys, such as roller derbies and other events like that in particular. Is that correct?
Well, we staff them with volunteers, but the volunteers get a stipend for all of those events. So it does cost the district, but not the same amount it would cost overtime for a career staff.
Correct. Okay.
And like I said, I'm not even sure that they need that level of service or that we have just offered that.
Right. I understand. You bet.
I just don't want to lose the PR. I'll take the fishing derby, for example. Dave sets up a tent. We have people there in uniform standing by, talking to the public. It's a great PR event. I just don't want to lose those sorts of opportunities because we can't afford to send duty people, or we don't have any other first aid certified people that could do that. I don't know what it would take if we had support volunteers. I would assume that they'd have to have some sort of first aid cert, wouldn't they, Chief?
Yeah, I would say they'd have first aid and CPR. However, the big thing that you want at those events, right, whether it's the Clark County Fair or the fishing derby, is you want the PR. You want them to see District 6 there, and a support service volunteer will handle that. The 911 system handles if you were to have a cardiac arrest or if you were to have a choking. That's what the 911 system handles. I don't know that it's necessary that we have a PR volunteer program that can somewhat handle it, but we would still dispatch that 911 system. We're kind of paying for both, I guess, when maybe we don't need to.
Well,
Yeah.
case volunteer, if I might, this may be along the lines of our PIO desires to have a presence at those events. And you talk about the 911 system. He's certainly capable of calling 911 and attending these events in a PR situation. If you gave him his dream of all dreams, was there's an event van or something like that with Clark County Fire District 6 present all over in a wrap or something like that, that might be what we're looking for. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with the same. I feel like if we're looking at a support services model, folks that are teaching CPR or in the public engaged in doing those things would have a minimum level of first aid and CPR certification. And I would agree with what the chief said in the sense that they're able to stop the clock. They're able to provide a basic level of service, and the 911 system delivers the ALS engine company.
That's all I would ask for, Chris.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to drop gavel on the regular meeting, I'd be in support of that.
Well, we have some questions that we probably should answer during the workshop
Okay.
to help us make a decision during the regular board meeting. So
Okay.
if the two of you don't have any more comments, then maybe Secretary of the Board Dave Tater could read some of the questions to us.
I can. Yes, sir. We have one from an individual that is not identified from name, but he's asking if Fire Corps members are EMTs.
Do you know, Chief?
So, no, they are not.
Okay.
Okay, next we have one from Tony Lothsbeck. Would the new volunteers, in quotes, Fire Corps or other, be required to ride out with duty crews?
So currently, we just changed the volunteer requirements where they have to ride out 24 hours before they can work 151. I would recommend the same for any new volunteer. But that being said, if we change this program to what staff desires, we'll have to rewrite the whole volunteer handbook. But yes, I think we value that amount of time that they have on with the duty crews.
And next, we have somebody who identifies as Brian Bosch, but then in the second paragraph they write it's from Trevor Fleshman. So I'm not sure if they're sharing an email address here, but it's more of a statement. And if you would like, I'll read it to you.
Thank you.
One of the limiting factors of pulling shifts at 151 is the number of apparatus operators. Is the driving certification class we were in the middle of before COVID-19 being taken into consideration? The first one is a question.
That would be for the chief.
So, thank you for asking that, Brian or Trevor. The evaluation of the volunteer program, as I stated when I started, has been going on for at least the past 4 years. So, although, yes, it is great that we are taking driver operator classes, and I realize that COVID-19 not only put a stop to that, but many other things, that's not the only issue that we see with the system of the program.
All right, I'll continue from Trevor Fleshman. First off, thank you for taking the time to evaluate the volunteer program. I know that we cost a lot, and we thank you for keeping us around this long. Although this is true, I feel there is a huge value to the volunteer program. As Chief Maurer said, we cover several PR and obviously the fair. I see this as a huge benefit to the district, as we can also provide EMS at these events and not just PR. Additionally, we provide a backup coverage when needed. This has been challenging over the last few years, but with some work, I think oftentimes we have people available for shifts but are unable to get a driver or officer. Therefore, this shift does not happen. I strongly feel that if we were to have personnel to fill these roles, the number of shifts and ultimately responses would improve. I know turnover is a huge problem, but I'm happy that nearly all of it is due to volunteers getting career jobs. Whichever way the board decides to go with the program, I want to say thank you for the time and effort you have put in. That's from Trevor.
Okay.
Next, from somebody identifying themselves as Little Texas 10, the Clark County Fair is a very large event for the district. Without EMT volunteers, how would the district continue to support the fair, which is a paid event for EMS staffing?
So if I look at both Little Texas and Tony Losbeck's next question from Bill Dunlap, they both addressed the fair. If you remember last year, the district negotiated a new contract with the fair that if we could not fill it with volunteers, that we would fill it with paid staff. The volunteers put a huge push forward last year, and we did not have to add that paid staff to there, but the fair has already agreed that they would pay for that. So that's one aspect of the fair. Staff truly believes that the fair is our biggest PR event, but we're not sure that we're not overstaffing it. And so we think that with support service volunteers and a few career people, we could provide staffing to the fair. Again, relying on that 911 system that we need and covers the fair if a major event was to happen. So we already reduced the amount of coverage at the fair last year. We added the ability to charge the Clark County Fair for paid career personnel to staff it if we couldn't afford to staff it with or if we couldn't get enough volunteers, and we will continue to move that direction with the contract with the fair. The fair is a long history of District 6, and I understand that, but the fair also pays a significant amount of money to have sheriff's officers there. They pay to have other departments there, and being that the Clark County Fair brings in so many people other than just our citizens, I think it's prudent that the district ask for compensation for that coverage.
I kind of need to throw in there that based on some inside information on a board that I am involved in, just remember that the fair does have the ability to talk to other departments in the county and see if they would staff it similar to what we do, because I know that they're concerned about the expense. Especially this year, there's absolutely no revenue for April and May and probably June. All the things out there have been canceled. The fair's in the hole about $200,000 at this point, and they're going to look for ways to save money come fair time. And I'm just throwing it out there so that everybody knows that there's a possibility they could talk to one of the other departments that has volunteers, probably from the north somewhere, and see if they would do it. I hope they don't, and I hope the chief could negotiate it. But it's always a possibility. So I just throw that out there. We'll see.
This is Dave Taylor again. There's just one final comment from Tiffany Mercer. Certified EMTs are required at roller derby events. They can't even warm up until we arrive. They have a really difficult time finding volunteers and are always very appreciative for our service there.
So I think when we make the, sorry.
Oh, I just saw some more coming in from her, so I can. Let me just run real quick. Lack of driver operators has a huge effect on our numbers at 151. Coverage will dramatically improve at the conclusion of our training. We love the opportunity to complete training and see how the statistics improve out there. Thank you so much for everything.
So first about the roller derby. I understand that it is a huge benefit to the roller derby, but when staff makes these decisions, we bring everything back to our mission statement. Is that proudly serving and protecting our community? And if you were to ask me if $200,000 is worth staffing the roller derby, I would emphatically say no. We maybe need to look at what we've volunteered ourselves to be committed to. It doesn't seem to fit within our overall mission of protecting the entire community. And although I would like to give the volunteers the opportunity to complete training, and I understand that COVID-19 interrupted some of that, when we made the move last year after this same presentation and moved Squad 151 out to Station 151, we were told at that time that response numbers would increase and that squad unit would allow more people to come out there and there would be more coverage, and we continually see a decrease. So I understand driver operators been postponed, but in the interim over the last year, staff has made other accommodations to try to up those numbers, and nothing seems to be panning out for us.
Board Secretary Taylor here again, from Ian Mansfield. If option 2 goes into effect and the volunteers stay operational at Station 61 and 63, will we be able to do career rideouts for longer than 0700 to 2200? I know I would like to be able to do full 24-hour shifts with the career staff, and I believe other volunteers feel the same way.
So, Ian, I can't disagree with you at all. And I have to know the history of it a little bit more, and maybe Commissioner Losbeck does know. If I recall right, it was a labor management discussion about not having the volunteers there past 10 o'clock. So that would have to be talked about. And I don't know if there was some kind of formal filing on that.
It was a labor management discussion, number one. And number two, at some of the stations, there was a lack of beds. Sleeping in recliners probably isn't appropriate. And that's something that I think that staff would have to discuss and look at options and go from there. I think there'd have to be some additional talks. Yeah, pretty much it.
And I'm more than happy to have that discussion at labor management. That's just not a decision I can make without consulting why that was made in the first place.
And I will agree with you, Chief, that I was one of the ones that pushed you to put the brush rig out at 151, knowing that drivers did not have to meet the same requirements as they do if they're driving a fire engine and pumping. And we did that, and our responses still dropped in half. So I would have to agree with you on that. I'm not sure it would make a lot of difference.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. We're gonna talk about this. I'm gonna put it under the last item of new business, Chief, for our regular meeting. We have to give you some direction. It's gone on long enough. If anybody out there of the 38 people watching or listening have additional questions or comments, go ahead and do that, and I'll ask Chief Schmidt to keep an eye on it and we can discuss those during citizen communication within our regular board meeting. So don't hesitate to ask some more questions or make some more comments. We will address that in the regular meeting. And with that said, we're going to take a 5-minute recess or 6-minute recess. And the regular board meeting of District 6 Commissioners will start at 7:50, 5 minutes. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. Chief Schmidt, if you'll mute us or whatever, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Okay,
2, 1.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is the April 7th, 2020 Fire District 6 Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Calling the meeting to order. And I will call for any additions to the agenda. We do have one under new business, which would be the volunteer program. Is there any other, gentlemen?
None here.
None.
Okay, can we read and approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2020 regular meeting and board workshop?
I move that we dispense with the reading of the minutes and approve them as posted and presented and post them as appropriate.
I'll second that.
I've moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Secretary, is there any citizen communication? Oh, we do have one citizen communication, I think maybe from the chief that she sent out. Did we get a letter from a citizen, chief, that you sent
Oh,
out?
I'm sorry. Yes, we did. We got a letter from a veteran that was thanking all the shifts for their service and understood what a difficult time this was. So,
Very nice.
and I did get 2 late today, kind of the same message, but I will get those to you for your next board meeting.
Thank you very much. I think that's important that our staff knows, and I appreciate you sending them out so we could read them on email too. So that's very nice. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see any other chat or questions from folks listening concerning the volunteer program. So we're at citizen communication, and with that said, do you see any other ones, Chief Schmidt?
No, there have not been any additions.
Okay, we're going to move on to committee reports then. Health and safety,
There's no report.
no report. Parade, there's no parade. Risk management group, no report. Triple FB, no report. So we'll go on to the consent agenda, gentlemen.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chief's report, facilities project update.
And at this time, I'll turn the board meeting over to Chief Newberry to give that report. Chief Newberry, are you there?
You want to just go through his report real quick for us then, Chief? We all have it in front of us.
Chief Maurer, maybe you can try reaching out and contacting him again and bringing him back on.
Technology, huh? We always have glitches. We're trying to be patient. It's okay.
Go ahead.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Yep.
Okay. Chief Newberry has facilities report.
Okay, well, yeah, we moved into Station 63, which is great. The crews have been out there. I suppose the first thing I'd mention is that we are limiting access to the fire stations from our contractors. And if we are letting any contractors in to take care of certain things that need to be taken care of, we are following certain guidelines that I've listed in the memo to Chief Maurer. She and I and the contractor have been in constant communication about this over the last several weeks. So, nonetheless, Station 62, we are putting off that PT room floor replacement until after it's safe to do so. 63, there's just some minor, details that we're working through, punch items, things that the crews need. But it's been fairly well received, and I think think the crews are pretty happy. I'm happy. The contractor's happy, and we're working through the minor issues. The IT, specifically the AV in the training room, is one thing that we tried to hustle to get it up and going so that our recruits that came back from the academy would have access to it, and we have made it work, although it's not completely seamless, and it won't be until we get our contractor back in there to help us with it. It is quite adequate. Interiors, the furniture's been installed. Candace, our interiors person, is sourcing suppliers for the artwork we decided on. I'll keeping you guys informed on that. Concrete and asphalt for phase 1 is on hold until we get out there with more crews. The one thing that we are definitely working on is securing the back parking lot with the gates. The island for the card reader is going in tomorrow and the next day, and so we hope that over the next 2 weeks we'll have a secure area back there. You probably noticed that Station 63, Old 63, has been demolished. It's on the ground. We got some good training on it for about a week. Many crews going through that. Since then, they have demolished it, and they are up there right now removing the concrete footings and pads to make way for the new foundation of the training center. I will make sure that I focus your attention on the fact that we are heeding the requirements or the proclamation for the governor, which says that only essential facilities will remain construction going on, and we're just watching the developments coming out of the governor's office to make sure that we're not violating any of those rules, but we are so far so good. Landscaping, there's no change in landscaping. The fueling station, we have submitted to get additional bids on that because we only received one. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. I don't have any change orders for you. It's been relatively slow, although I did get a bunch of them today to consider, and that just has to go through the process, but they weren't ready for your review yet. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Chief, what's the elevation difference between the back of the fire station and the training tower? Is it going to be 6 or 8 feet difference, or are they going to bring some dirt down?
Yeah, it's 6 or 8. It's about 6 feet now, and they do have a considerable cut to make. I don't know off the top of my head what the elevation change is. I just know that on the elevation plan, it shows a moderate slope. It's not a terrible slope, but it certainly isn't ideal, but it's been designed to account for it.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you. Anything else for Chief Newberry?
Commissioner Collins here. On that concrete paving, says some of the panels need to be replaced due to poor quality. Was that due to adverse weather and lack of protection? Or craftsmanship?
I would say both. They did have some weather, and I insisted they not pour in the rain. They told me that they would protect it. The first time that they didn't protect it, I told them that I didn't want any more pouring during the rain. They assured me that they would fix it, and I said, that's fine, you can pour all you want, but if it's not good concrete, we're going to have it taken out, and that's where we're at. So there was some weather issues, but there's also some significant lapses in craftsmanship. So nobody's very happy with.
So we shouldn't expect to see a change order for that?
No, you should not.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Chief Newberry? Doing nothing, Chief. We're going to move on to personnel action report.
So for the personal action report for this board meeting, we have Jeff Van Laken that just completed his 26 years as a career firefighter. He has more with his volunteer years at April 1st, 2020. Ashley Mitchum, who's been on an extended leave, will return to work May 1st, 2020. Both Brian Legato and Josh Weston, who are new paramedic hires, have received their Clark County paramedic endorsement. Because they had previous experience, those two are already on the apparatus and working with crews. And then we have Dennis Schaefer and Zach Hogan. And they were both up at the Fire Academy. Once the governor gave the order to everyone stay at home, we brought them home and they're doing in-house training. And we can get them the rest of their training that they needed that they would have got at State Academy.
Very good.
We'll have to have some big celebration for them because their graduation got canceled as well. So.
Okay.
I'd just like to say congrats to all. That's 26 years is a long time, and congrats to Ashley for returning to work.
Absolutely.
And just point of clarification, Commissioner Pfeiffer, we have to work 30 years in Washington, so he's not past his 25 years.
That's a good one.
Okay. Okay, how about COVID-19 update, Chief?
So I'm sure you guys have been getting all the group emails. It's changing every day and some days hourly. I have to really commend Chief Russell, who's just done an outstanding job of constantly bending and moving with all these changes. So he's on the phone every day with either the crews or other people getting updated. And the same with Captain Samika. So those two people have really done more to protect our members than any other people at the department, I feel. But you'll see that today we just moved to where we're recommending cloth masks. That's a big move since the Surgeon General recommended we wear masks in public, as well as the IAFF has also recommended that. So we're following that. The district did purchase some masks for personnel that they can use. Our day personnel continue to be working remote when they can. They're available during normal office hours, and we utilize them by phone or conference call daily and multiple times. So we're doing the best we can with keeping them safe and at home if they're what are considered non-essential personnel by the governor's standards, but they're definitely not non-essential to us. So that's kind of where we're at.
Any questions? I know we're spending a lot of money on PPE, but that's necessary. And thank goodness we have some reserves.
Yeah.
Getting our hands on everything we can get, and then we're also keeping all those COVID purchases separate with anticipation that there may be some refund in those purchases.
There definitely could be. Good. Very good. That's excellent. Any other chief's report issues?
Not for me, sir.
Okay, old business. Policy 200, organizational structure. And I'll just remind the other board members, this is the second time that we've seen this one. It's had its 30 days. So let me know what you want to do.
I don't have any further questions. Make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Collins, I second it.
Moved and seconded to approve policy 200. All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Okay, policy 300, incident management. Second reading.
You two are more experts on it than I am, so I'm going to follow your lead and more than likely move for approval.
The only change on policy 300 was changing the adopted date so that we reviewed it and updated it. There's
Right.
no changes in the policy.
Yeah, I'd second approval.
Who did the motion? I'm sorry.
Collins.
Okay, and seconded by Commissioner Pfeiffer. Moved and seconded to adopt policy 300. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So moved. Any other old business? Hearing none, we're going to move on to new business. Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act. I think the chief just put this in there so all the board members would have the information.
That is correct.
We did check with our attorney, Mr. Schnur. This is the blanket statement that he sent out to all the fire districts in the state, and we are complying, just so everybody knows.
Thank you.
Policy 1087, Families First Coronavirus Act.
to start off, that's a typo in new business. It should be policy 1088. This is the first time you're seeing this policy because we just drafted it this week. But essentially, this was a federal mandate from Trump, the president, that gave coverage to personnel that had issues associated with COVID. We met as county chiefs, and all the county departments have recommended to adopt the same policy. So the policy you see here will be the same as District 3, same as Clark First, same as East County. The city departments have their own policy, but we mirrored this after them. So essentially, you can make the option to not give first responders anything in the Families First Corona Response Act. None of us felt that was reasonable, so we didn't give emergency responders the public health emergency leave, but then we did give them emergency paid sick leave of 80 hours. And that had to be to Corona specific. So you had to test positive, be put into quarantine by Department of Health. And there's one other reason that you could do it. Oh, if you have symptoms of COVID. So those would be the only things that would be covered in those additional 80 hours. I do want to inform the board, though, that as of this point, those 80 hours for public sector are not reimbursed. So that would be completely on the district dime. But like I said, all the chiefs in the county met and felt that's what we needed to do to protect our people.
Yes, sounds great. Thank you for preparing this.
So this being a new policy, we have to wait until our next meeting to adopt it unless we declare an emergency. Chief, Secretary Taylor, can you help me out on that?
Yes, that's correct.
Could we declare an emergency during our regular meeting to adopt that without a second reading?
Yes, you can.
I would prefer to do that. I think 3 weeks is a long time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I would
a long time for the things could happen in the next 2 weeks. We would need a motion from the board to declare an emergency, and then we would need another motion to adopt the policy.
Yeah, Commissioner Pfeiffer here. I'd like to make a motion to declare an emergency and move forward with adoption of the policy.
Second.
Excellent. You covered both of those for me, sir. We are going to declare an emergency and adopt policy 1088 immediately. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Secretary Taylor. I appreciate that also.
Sure.
Any other new business besides the volunteer program?
None for me, sir.
Okay. We're going to go, I think at this point, the board needs to give staff some direction. We've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. And I think we need to give you some specific direction. I would prefer to do a Fire District 6 service volunteer program instead of Fire Corps at this point in time. They'd be representing us. We'd get them T-shirts or sweatshirts or whatever they need to go out and do smoke detectors or whatever they're doing. They would probably still meet once a month, Chief.
Well, yeah, we would set that up, but Fire Corps right now meets once a month, so I think that's pretty standard for that type of program.
Okay.
Support service or Fire Corps.
So I'm completely for option 3, and option 2. I think we need to give our combat people the rest of the year to respond back and to get their drivers trained and wherever else they may need. Wondering how the other board members feel about policy or option 2.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pfeiffer.
I think this is a tough decision no matter what way we look at it. It's been talked about, and the data has been analyzed over much of the last 4 years, as the chief said. It's just a very difficult decision, but I think we need to look at what makes business sense, as it's highlighted. The return on investment with 48 out of 507 calls, the training and the turnover rate, it's just making it difficult to maintain a combat volunteer force. And as the chief highlighted, the fire service in general has changed, and we are one of the last remaining departments here in Clark County that does have combat volunteers. So I would like to support what staff has outlined. A lot of work went into this presentation, these PowerPoints. I know that they have all agonized and really dived deep into the operations, and particularly the volunteer side of the department. So I'd really like to follow what staff has outlined moving forward with regard to the volunteer program.
Well, I like the opportunity that we'd be continuing the training through the end of the calendar year. And so, the combination of 2 and 3 seems to be most palatable to do that. And I don't want to act in haste. Not that we would, because we've been analyzing it forever. And so I'm kind of in favor of the combination of the number 2 and number 3 in combination, and gracefully facilitate those who would gain their certifications before the end of the year.
I agree, Commissioner Collins. Thank you. So no, we're not going to do another volunteer academy. We're going to do a temporary transition. Current volunteer members would trish it out. We're going to not respond from Station 151 anymore. They'll respond to either Station 1 or 3 between now and the end of the year. And we will look forward to staff putting together a whole outline on the service volunteer program between now and then. Are we going to still trying to do interns once things get better, Chief?
Staff still does see the benefit of interns. Just that whole cadet cadre that we're losing out on. Yes, that is still on the plan.
Okay, and would we still do CERT?
Yes, CERT would not be affected by this. Yeah.
Okay, and CERT people could transition into the service volunteer program if they wanted, I would assume.
Sure.
Okay. So I don't know if we need to make an official motion, but I think we should take a stand on this to support staff. So what I heard was the board supports options 2 and 3 together. And if that's correct, could I get a motion?
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. And it's not crystal clear. It's going to be a journey as we go forward. But I would make a motion that we incorporate options 2 and 3 as direction from the board to the chief.
I would second that as well. Are we looking for a timeline date of the end of the year, Chief?
That's what option 2 is, I believe, right, Chief?
It's not spelled out in your packet, but that's what staff desires, is the December 31st cutoff date.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Commissioner Pfeiffer, then? We do 2 and 3 together?
Yeah, you bet. I'll second the motion with the December 31st date, as Commissioner Collins indicated, I guess, in his making of the motion. So I would second that, yes.
So it's been moved and seconded that we support the staff's position and go with options 2 and 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And with that said, I just want folks to know it's an extremely tough decision for all of us to make. It really is. The department started out as all volunteer to provide service to the community. And we were successful for a lot of years with a combination department. But as things have moved forward, time that people have to volunteer to anything has decreased, and the qualifications put upon volunteer and paid firefighters by the state of Washington has crippled, I think, the volunteer programs in the state of Washington. I've talked to fellow commissioners in Eastern Washington, and they don't even go inside buildings anymore. They have no SCBAs. They do all their suppression from the outside because they just can't afford to meet all the requirements, and it is difficult. And I would thank all of our past and current volunteers. And I would hope that our current volunteers would please stay with us and support the service volunteer program. If you have some suggestions, some options for that program, whether it be the air rig or things that folks can do, please let Chief Maurer know so we can try to incorporate those as they develop a new service volunteer program for the district. So volunteers aren't going away. Combat volunteers are. And I know the board and staff appreciates all that our volunteers have done for us in the past. And unfortunately, I think the time has just come. So thank you all very much.
I concur. Those are nice words, Commissioner Wasbeck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there thank you, gentlemen. Is there any other new business? Hearing none, let's go to the round table. And I think, Secretary Taylor, we have a citizen communication that came in on the chat.
Yes, we do. From this is Secretary Taylor from Bill Dunlap. Local 1805 is hosting a blood drive all day on April 21st at the local 452's Union Hall.
That would be on Fruit Valley Road, eh?
Yes.
I would assume it is. Okay. Other roundtable go to the order? Chief, would you bring the other two board members? I need to tell the other two board members that I represent the board when we meet with Liz Loomis once a month to talk about our campaign going forward to educate the public on what we want and why. And one of the things they're doing, there was a letter to the editor sent in, and could you bring the other board members up to speed on that, Chief?
Yeah, so I feel really fortunate with the cadre of chiefs that we have in all of Clark County right now. It's a cohesive team and something that I haven't seen us work together that tightly before. But like I said, we're all drafting the same family first policy and we're on the same page there. And then with Liz Loomis, we all went together and wrote a letter to the editor announcing that we're here for the people, that we've trained for these pandemics, and that we're ready to support them, and we appreciate the community's continued support. And then part of that letter to the editor also outlines how we're doing our board meetings online and how they get to these board meetings if they so desired. So I just feel really fortunate to have that cadre of chiefs where we really are functioning as a team, and it's nice. It makes
Very good.
Clark County feel really big.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great to hear.
Chief Maurer, if it gets published, will you send us a copy or a link to that?
Definitely. It just went out on the news flash this morning, so I will as soon as it's published.
Thank
Or
you.
you can buy a newspaper, Casey.
I get what I can get for free
Yes.
online.
He gets it online.
I know he does. Gosh, I was going to say something else. I don't know what it was. I'm getting old. Oh, obviously, folks saw that the Hazel Parade of Bands was canceled. We canceled it before the governor decided that school was going to be out till the end of the year. But we do have some people that were helping with that, and we plan on doing it bigger and better next year. There are some bands and some directors and some kids disappointed, but obviously we have no control over that. And so be it.
Yeah. Do you know if Santa's Posse's got involved during these times of need with our community?
We have not. It's really tough with so much need out there. We just don't have the resources to take care of,
Sure.
1,000 people or whatever. So we're going to try to, instead of 1,000 people, families next year, we have a little money left over. We're going to try to do 1,200, which is logistically going to be crazy, but we're going to try to do it.
Yeah, just curious. I saw a big lineup at the, I don't know if it was the food bank drop-off or food bank pickup. I just saw a snapshot, so I'll look into that further.
Yeah. Okay. Next meeting will be, I assume, just like this one is. Chief, are we going to talk about apparatus placement, or do you want to push that off?
We're going to push that off with the strategic plan, which has been
Okay.
delayed a little bit with the COVID-19.
Okay. So next meeting, there will not be a workshop. Our regular time will be 7:30 then. And we'll go from there. Any other roundtable or good of the order?
Just for the board, Tina will have all the paperwork ready tomorrow. If you can come in individually, that's easier on the department.
What time is she going to be there? Between like 10 and noon or?
She's usually there between 9 and noon, but I can text you guys in the morning to confirm.
Okay.
Okay,
Super duper.
sounds good.
So we need to authorize payment of current bills, authorize monthly commissioner compensation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for all you who tuned in to listen to us, and for everybody that made comments so we could discuss items further. We really appreciate it. Thank you next month. Thank you. We'll see you next month, or next 2 weeks, I guess. And we're out of here, so we're adjourned.